In this section, we will look at how consumer sentiment in the U.S. increased from 33% in March 2023 to 36% in May 2023, according to McKinsey U.S. Consumer Pulse Survey. This survey is a monthly update on the state of the U.S. consumer, based on responses from more than 4,000 adults. It tracks how consumers feel about their economic future, their spending habits, and their preferences across different product categories. The survey shows that optimism is on the rise among U.S. consumers, although challenges remain. The percentage of consumers who are pessimistic about the economy has held fairly constant in the first months of 2023, at a level higher than at any point during the COVID-19 pandemic. Still, there was a small uptick in optimism. 36% of U.S. consumers, up from 33% in March 2023 and 26% in June 2022, expect a quick economic rebound. Optimism is not yet back to 2021 levels, but it is trending in a favorable direction. The survey also reveals that optimism varies by demographic groups and income brackets. Consumers in the younger groups and the higher income brackets tend to be more optimistic than others. For example, 89% of high-income millennials are trading down to save money, compared with 58% of high-income baby boomers. This suggests that millennials are more confident about their future income and spending power. One of the reasons for the increase in optimism may be the easing of pandemic restrictions across the country. Consumers are venturing out of their homes again and spending more on categories that were hit hard by the pandemic, such as travel, entertainment, and dining out. However, they are also being more financially cautious and selective in their spending, as inflation and price increases have eroded their purchasing power. They are looking for ways to stretch their dollars, such as trading down, buying online, or switching brands. The survey also indicates that consumer preferences and behaviors are changing rapidly and unpredictably. Consumers are willing to try new products and services that offer value or novelty, and they are less loyal to their once preferred brands. This creates both challenges and opportunities for businesses that need to stay on top of consumers' fast-changing attitudes and needs. In summary, consumer sentiment in the U.S. has improved slightly from March to May 2023, but it remains mixed and uncertain. Consumers are more optimistic about the economy, but they are also more careful and selective about their spending. They are looking for value, convenience, and innovation in their purchases, and they are open to switching brands and channels. Businesses that can adapt to these shifts and meet consumers' evolving expectations will have a competitive edge in the post-pandemic market. Consumer sentiment is a measure of how optimistic or pessimistic people are about the current and future state of the economy. It affects their spending and saving behavior, which in turn influences the overall economic activity. In this section, we will look at how consumer sentiment varied across different demographic groups and income brackets in May 2023, and which segments were the most optimistic and pessimistic about the economic future. According to the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, consumer sentiment in the United States stood at 59.2 in May 2023, an increase from the previous month. However, this was still a 6-month low and below the pre-pandemic level of 101.0 in February. The index is normalized to a value of 100 in December 1964 and based on a monthly survey of consumers, conducted in the continental United States. The increase in consumer sentiment in May was driven by a slight improvement in the expectations component, which rose from 54.7 in April to 56.8 in May. This reflected some optimism about the economic recovery, as more people received vaccinations and restrictions eased. However, the current conditions component declined from 74.9 in April to 63.8 in May, indicating that consumers were still facing financial challenges and inflation pressures. Consumer sentiment varied significantly by demographic groups and income brackets. Generally, younger consumers, higher income consumers, and Black consumers were more optimistic than older consumers, lower income consumers, and white consumers. Among age groups, Gen Z, 18 to 24 years old, had the highest consumer sentiment index of 66.4, followed by millennials, 25 to 40 years old, with 64. Gen X, 41 to 56 years old, had a lower index of 58.9, while baby boomers, 57 to 75 years old, had the lowest index of 53. This pattern reflects the different impacts of the pandemic on different generations, as well as their expectations for the future. Among income brackets, consumers with annual household incomes above $100,000 had the highest consumer sentiment index of 67.3, followed by those with incomes between $75,000 and $100,000 with 62. Consumers with incomes between $50,000 and $75,000 had a lower index of 57.8, while those with incomes below $50,000 had the lowest index of 53. This pattern reflects the different levels of financial security and purchasing power among different income groups. Among racial groups, Black consumers had the highest consumer sentiment index of 65.7, followed by Hispanic consumers with 61. White consumers had a lower index of 57.6, while Asian consumers had the lowest index of 55. This pattern reflects the different experiences and perceptions of discrimination and social justice among different racial groups. Therefore, we can see that consumer sentiment in May 2023 was influenced by various factors such as vaccination rates, economic recovery prospects, inflation expectations, financial pressures, and social issues. The most optimistic segments were Gen Z consumers, high-income consumers, and Black consumers, while the most pessimistic segments were baby boomer consumers, low-income consumers, and Asian consumers. Consumer spending behavior changed significantly in response to price increases and financial pressures in May. Here are some of the main trends that emerged. Consumers traded down to save money. Many consumers switched to cheaper brands, pack sizes, or stores to cope with inflation and budget constraints. According to a survey by Global Data, 4 out of 5 consumers said they traded down in some way. Walmart reported that its sales of prime beef declined, while its sales of regular grade beef increased. Similarly, TJX, the parent company of TJ Maxx and Marshalls, saw a 5% increase in same-store sales, as consumers sought value and bargains in clothing. Consumers splurged selectively on certain categories. Despite the overall slowdown in spending growth, consumers still intended to splurge on some categories that they considered important or enjoyable. According to a report by McKinsey, consumers plan to spend more on home entertainment, personal care, and alcohol in the next 6 months. Target also reported that its sales of beauty products, electronics, and toys grew faster than its average sales growth. Consumers shifted their preferences to adapt to the new normal. The pandemic had a lasting impact on how consumers shopped, paid, and purchased. According to a report by Visa, consumers preferred online shopping, contactless payments, and subscription services over traditional methods. Consumers also favored local and sustainable products over imported and mass-produced ones. Additionally, consumers became more health-conscious and sought products that enhanced their immunity, wellness, and mental health. These trends show how consumer spending behavior changed in response to price increases and financial pressures in May. They also indicate how consumers traded down, splurged selectively, or shifted their preferences to cope with the changing economic and social environment.